Study Session 1. Nature and Concepts of Business. Introduction. The concept of business arises out of a very basic and obvious everyday fact in the world. Every human being needs different types of goods and services in the course of his living. However, it is known that everyone does not possess everything he wants. Everyone has some things in excess of what he wants and he barters them for those he is in need of. For example, a person who has more wheat than his needs will barter the excess for something else, say clothes. This concept, when applied to the economy at large and introducing the concepts of money and organized market, gives birth to a business. The term business can be used loosely or academically to mean different things. This study session is intended to give you an overview of the various concepts and nature of business. It is also anticipated to expose you to the various views about and purposes of business. The nature of business. Man, as a social being, often organizes themselves into various forms of groups and institutions meant to address certain needs of society. These may be government or non-government institutions, profit-oriented or non-profit-oriented organizations, or others, having a combination of the two dichotomous features stated above. Some government-owned institutions may be profit-oriented. Examples include the following: Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Nigeria Railway Corporation, NRC, Nigeria Port Authority, NPA, Sheraton Hotels. They can also be non-profit-oriented, such as the following: National University Commission, NUC, Federal Educational Institutions. Nigerian Police Force, Nigerian Air Force, etc. Examples of organizations that are non-governmental but profit-oriented would include commercial banks, law firms, accounting firms, indigenous transport companies, all indigenous airlines, and a host of others. Orphanages, religious organizations, charities, and educational foundations are examples of institutions that are both non-governmental and non-profit-oriented. Definition of a business. A business is an organization or enterprising entity engaged in commercial, industrial, or professional activities. A business can be a for-profit entity, such as a publicly traded corporation, or a non-profit organization engaged in business activities, such as an agricultural cooperative. Aims of business. As you can see from the preceding point, the primary goal of any business is to make a profit and to maximize the same within the bounds of societal ethics. Avenue for innovation. Often, business becomes the most viable avenue through which innovation and ingenuity can be displayed and sustained. Innovation is the introduction of new or novel ideas, products, services, or methods into society. Many people's talents have been buried, along with their innovative prowess, owing to their inability to either produce their first prototype or mass-produce the same to a profitable level. The failure is usually blamed on a lack of funds. They forget that even ideas can be leased or sold at a profit, and the income realized can then form a basis for the takeoff of other business ventures. At any stage, from the conception to the introduction of the innovation into the market, business can be a veritable tool through which innovations are achieved and sustained. All products and services go through life cycles. At the initial stage, investments are naturally higher than the earnings and the sustaining motive is innovation. We often expect this situation to change as quickly as possible so as to begin to make profit, which is our major objective. Any ongoing business that wants to remain relevant must constantly innovate, in order to meet the constantly changing needs of society. The only thing that should remain static is constant change. Expansion and growth. No parent wants his child to remain a baby throughout life or even experience stunted growth, always wanting to be spoon-fed. Instead, they often desire their children to grow rapidly, physically and mentally. The same way, all businesses desire that every of their units will grow and expand rapidly. Every business wants a growth of her market shares, returns on investment, and other share price indices, in the case of public liability companies. Indeed, one major reason for making and retaining profits is to be able to channel same towards the growth and expansion of the business. All businesses sometimes go through either a boom, peak, or a lull, bear. In the former situation, prices and consequently profits are at their peaks. A prudent business manager will at this period garner and appropriate the accruing profits by adding other lines of products or services, expansion, to the business. These new additions or diversifications, which initially may not be making profit, often becomes the cash cows to take over from the previous ones, which may then be going through a bearish period. There is no room for stagnation in business. It is either you grow and expand commensurately or you risk extinction. You must keep customer satisfaction, Remember we mentioned that profits are to be earned and not to be extorted. We also noted that businesses first anticipate the needs of society before going ahead to produce and distribute goods and services that will meet these needs. One major attribute of successful businesses is their ability to appropriately identify needs or gaps in the society and quickly fill them. By so doing, the aspirations and yearnings of customers are met and fulfilled. Their needs are satisfied and they are happy and at times even eager to part with the prices in exchange for the products and services. In business, the customer is king. The customer is the reason that the business exists. Without the customer, business is dead. Therefore, one important objective of business is to seek to satisfy our customers or life wire. Employee satisfaction. Every business has at least an employee, even the sole proprietor is an employee of his own business. Without the employees there will be no work done, therefore no profit. Kreitner, 1992, succinctly noted that people not technology alone or marketing ploys are the keys to success in any business or global competition. And employees can only put in their best when they are sufficiently motivated. Therefore business must of a necessity aim at satisfying her employees. Every employee has his own personal goals and aspirations. Indeed, the paramount reason for joining any organization as an employee is to be able to obtain rewards that will be used to satisfy his personal needs. His contribution to the attainment of organizational goals is secondary and consequent upon the fact of it being a prerequisite for the reward. As the business endeavors to meet her own goal, she must try to satisfy her employees. Some good organizations even share some profits with their employees. Owner satisfaction. In some texts, this same objective is captured as shareholder satisfaction. This becomes very appropriate when you are considering public liability companies as the only type of business. While sole proprietors are sole owners and managers of their businesses, shareholders are people who buy into the shares of companies, and so, are co-owners of the business. Shareholders may or may not be part of management. The owners are the people responsible for the capital of the business. Whenever there is a shortfall, they are usually the last resort, as the business tries to raise more funds to augment the cost of running the business. Again, they are usually the greatest losers in the event of bankruptcy. It is little wonder therefore that businesses have as one of their goals the satisfaction of her owners. Social and ethical responsibility. One of the goals of businesses is to be socially and ethically responsible to all their stakeholders, both within and immediate environment of their business environment. To be socially responsible implies that the business should seek to improve on the lots of her stakeholders. One way or the other, the activities of a business will impinge on the welfare of the people within and around the business environment. The activities of the business may contribute to pollution. Air, water or noise pollutions are examples. They may also have contributed to the wear and tear of the roads and some other social amenities and infrastructure. Businesses therefore try to fulfill their corporate social responsibilities by providing or contributing to the provision of some of these amenities. Some businesses can provide borehole water or rural electrification for their immediate environment, where these needs are critical needs. Ethics has to do with beliefs about what is right or wrong, good or bad, within the context of societal norms and values. Thus while, in some societies, it may be legal to profit, here it will be ethically wrong. Businesses have it as one of their core objectives to operate within the bounds ethically approved standards. Study Session 2. Classification of business. Introduction. Business activities are undertaken to satisfy human wants by producing goods or rendering services. We may classify business activities on the basis of functions into two broad categories, A. Industry and B. Commerce. The industry is concerned with the production and processing of goods. These types of business units are called industrial enterprises, which produce consumer goods as well as machinery and equipment. On the other hand, commerce includes all those activities, which are necessary for the storage and distribution of goods. Such units are called commercial enterprises, which include trading and service activities like transport, banking, insurance, and warehousing. This study session is intended to expose you to the various ways in which business has been grouped in the constituents of each group. Classification of business. Different authors have classified business differently. Some authors classified business on the basis of size. Others classified business on the basis of the economic sector to which they belong. Yet others use other bases for the categorization of business, depending many times on the purpose for the labeling. Many times, the need to categorize businesses into groups may arise. For reasons of economic development, supervisory and controlling roles, government may decide to group businesses into their different types. Indeed, businesses may be grouped at times for the purpose of taxation or for government support. These groupings may make for easy identification of the various sectors or groups and their unique needs. It makes for the identification of the critical areas of need and/or surplus. While some groups may be taxed, others may be given tax holidays or some supports. You will go ahead to discuss the various grouping that is prevalent these days. Groupings according to size. Under this arrangement, business is simply grouped into micro-scale business, small-scale business, medium-scale business, and large-scale business. By sizes we often mean the number of outlets or branches, the number of its workers or full-time employees, the value of capital employed, the size of its market share, the value of its fixed assets or a combination of these criteria. It must be stated clearly at this point that the categorization according to size is both relative and dynamic. Over the years the boundaries set for the different classes had to change in order to reflect current economic, particularly, inflationary situations. It was possible in the 60s to set the upper boundary of small-scale businesses at a total fixed asset of 150,000 naira. However, that figure is now ridiculously small, and has naturally been reviewed upwards. Again, the boundaries vary across nations. According to position in the production process. Sometimes businesses are grouped on the basis of their position in the production process. Here, businesses are grouped into two dichotomous groups. Primary producers, extractors. Secondary producers, processors and assemblers, facilitators and distributors. Extractors. Extractors are called primary producers because their raw materials are taken directly from their crude and natural state. Some businesses that fall under this group include mining, drilling, lumbering, fishing, hunting, quarrying. Processors and assemblers. Processors are involved in converting extracted products into semi-finished or finished goods. All manufacturers and fabricators belong to this group. Specifically, sawmillers, blacksmiths, builders, and all manufacturers are people whose businesses fall under this group. The major difference between manufacturers and assemblers is that, whereas the first group produces most of the components that they couple together, the second group only couples already made parts into single units of items. Most supposedly car and computer manufacturers in Nigeria are actually assemblers. They are mainly involved with the coupling of the different parts of these cars and computers, which have been manufactured outside the country. It is important to point out here that there can be some overlaps. For example, a sawmiller, who ought to be a processor, can also be involved in lumbering, which is an extraction business. Some assemblers also do some fabrications, which is also a form of processing. You would have found out that some of these same businesses had earlier been categorized to belong to certain groups based on their sizes. There are therefore no clear-cut dividing lines between some of the different categories. Facilitators and distributors. A facilitator is a person whose business is supportive in nature. These businesses render supportive services to other organizations that cut across different categories. Banks, hotels, transport companies, security firms, and consulting firms are some examples that fall under this group. Most organizations have core objects, which they are involved in, and often employ the services of these facilitators to handle some other jobs that fall outside their core foci. Most big organizations now employ the services of security firms and transport firms to handle those two areas of their businesses. Distributors are also producers. Production is the process of making goods and services available to the final consumers, and this is where the distributors come in. Indeed, distribution includes the process of warehousing and grading products. Through distributors, products are moved from areas where they surplus to other areas where people are in dire need of them. Distributors also help to preserve perishable goods, which they then make available to customers much later, out of season. Classification according to the economic sector. Another very important way of classifying businesses is to group them into the various economic sectors to which they belong. You, therefore, have agricultural firms, educational institutions, financial institutions, construction firms, and a host of others. Now, there are many areas in each of these sectors that make this classification method a bit confusing. Luckily, the International Standard of Industrial Classification, ISIC, adopts a simplified method of classifying industries into their various sectors. ISIC does this by using numbers to identify industries. The identification number of an industry or a business type is thus made up of 4 digits, with the first 2 digits indicating the major industrial division to which the organization belongs. The third digits represent a subunit of the major division to which it belongs, and then the subsequent digit tells us about the sub-subunit that it belongs. Classification according to types of ownership. Broadly speaking, Businesses can be categorized into public and private enterprises, or government and non-governmental business organizations. Recall that the first group can only be termed a business if its overriding purpose is profit. Examples can be found in the use of dichotomies like public schools and private schools, and public sector and private sector. Another criterion to classify a business is its form of legal ownership. There are at least 3 forms of legal ownership that businesses can take. They are sole proprietorship, partnership, and corporation. We shall expatiate on this type of categorization later in this course.